Thank you so much for coming tonight. This is an important topic, and I'm glad you are here. Remotely, I'm glad we're here. We had about 90 people from our stake sign up, which is pretty impressive. And so we're grateful for taking the time to learn more about emergency preparedness with water. We're going to start with our opening prayer, and Janet Thomas is going to
Father, I thank you for this day and for the blessings that thou hast given us, and please continue to guide and direct us. Bless Brother Pinson on talking about emergency water preparation, and help us to get it. In the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen. Okay, so my name is Linda Breeden, and I'm the new Northfield State Emergency Preparedness Specialist. And I'm going to be speaking briefly, and then we'll turn the majority of the time over to Brother Mark Pinson. And for those that are attending remotely, if you have questions or comments, if you just put them in the chat, and then Brother Thomas will do his best to moderate that, getting the questions here for us. Okay, the Lord has told us, if you are prepared, you shall not fear. And this applies to both spiritual and temporal preparedness. Preparedness for the whole soul. This year we are using a resource, Be Prepared, Not Scared. This is the book here. This is a great resource. It's one worth having in your emergency preparedness kit to use as a reference now, and then when an emergency happens, to be able to actually look at it and go, how do I empty my hot water tank? Or, she has a ton of information in here, and I really encourage you to get that if you can. And her information is right up here. She's from the Mount Mahogany Stake, the one that has put this together. It breaks it down month by month, so it takes the whole temporal part of being prepared and breaks it up bite by bite, so we don't have to feel overwhelmed, but just little by little, and wherever we're at, just improving and progressing where we need to go. The Northfield Stake also has a website on emergency preparedness. It's the nfprep.com. This has taken those 12 areas as well and has links to a lot more information, videos. They've done a really good job, and then we're going to be adding to it this year, kind of more on the spiritual part of it, as well as these live YouTubes will be put up there as well. Okay, so I encourage all of us to set up either a digital directory or folders, or grab a binder, put 12 tabs in it, and be ready to gather and practice soul-sustaining skills. And again, that's both spiritual and temporal this year. We hope that we can increase our capacity and knowledge within our existing or maybe slightly improved family and personal routines. I believe that if something is not a part of that routine, it won't happen. So be thinking about that in the back of your head of how can I implement any of this just in something that I'm already doing? Maybe just expanding a little bit. But some of those routines we can be discussing while driving, shopping for needed items, meal preparation while practicing different skills, planning and experiencing and experimenting during family home evening. I have learned this last year, things that I thought were going to work a certain way in emergency preparedness items did not, and it wasn't functional for me, and so I had to do a different way. And so you got to try things out, practice them a little bit. So just like anything we want to improve on, it does take practice. And let's focus our time and attention and awareness now. So when we'll be ready when, and it's not an if, it's just going to be a when, the emergencies come in our lives. So this month, our preparedness focus is on water, both the living water from Jesus Christ and drinking water. Both need to come from pure and safe sources. When water moves away from the pure source, it becomes more contaminated with seen and unseen particles. And this, again, works for both spiritual and temporal. As President Nelson has said, if you and I are to withstand the forthcoming perils and pressures, it is imperative that we each have a firm spiritual foundation built upon the rock of our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. When Jesus Christ calls himself the living water, he is teaching that he is the only source that can permanently satisfy the soul. Jesus is ready and waiting to give us his living water, the life-giving power that comes from his atonement, his teachings, and the Holy Ghost. As his conversation with the Samaritan woman at the well shows, he does not force, but he offers. and we must choose to receive. We are responsible to turn the faucet on. The living water is meant to be alive, flowing, renewing, and not to be stagnant. During an emergency of any kind, and that could be spiritual, emotional, physical, financial, temporal, it is key to have a strong flowing connection with heaven to personally give us guidance and comfort. So following are just some ideas of how we can work within our personal and family routines to help increase our capacity to increase this precious living water. So one is we can go more often to the pure source of the living water. So pray more with more intent and practice that two-way communication. Because I don't know about you guys, but that takes a lot of practice, is that praying to get it to come back this way. But we've got to be able to develop that, and it's not going to happen overnight. Increase temple attendance and living within our covenants to be his disciples. Emulate the life of Christ and have him guide us by the Holy Ghost. Ponder, practice, and experiment upon the word of God. 2, living water isn't loud at all. It is very quiet. And so we can practice sitting quietly for a few minutes, which may seem really awkward for us. We're on such a fast pace, just being still is kind of difficult sometimes. Put away our phones and social media more often. Breathe slowly and become aware of God's presence. This helps create space for peace, clarity, inner renewal, and guidance. 3, practicing gratitude helps keep the faucet open. So we can name 3 things or more that we're thankful for each day. We can thank Jesus Christ specifically for small and ordinary gifts that he's given us and also the miracles in our lives. Living water is meant to flow through, not just to be stored. So we can do small acts of kindness, forgive instead of holding grudges, listen carefully to someone, take the sacrament more intentionally, and allow the ordinance to help us clean out any debris and allow the water to flow more freely. So I encourage each of us to start where we are, not to get overwhelmed, just take the next step and then help someone along the way. So I'd like to now turn the time over to Brother Pinson, which has the major portion on the temporal part of water.
Good evening. Can you hand me that microphone? Do you know what you were doing 32 years ago to the day? I do. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and where I lived 32 years ago on Martin Luther King Day, there was a major earthquake, 6.7, and that's big. So this is a picture of my neighborhood. This is not on Martin Luther King Day. This is about 4 days later. So things were much better. So what I put on the slide here is things can happen that disrupt the flow of water. We're used to turning on the tap and there it is. And in this case, this deprived 50,000 homes of water for at least 5 days, and 12,000 homes, including mine, no water for a couple of weeks. And that's bad because you need water every day. And so I don't know if any of you have been really, really thirsty. If you've been thirsty to the point where you couldn't think straight, that kind of thirsty, it doesn't take long, especially if it's hot and the weather is dry. So before you're dead, you're not functioning right. You can't think right, you're not strong and able to move around. And that just makes any emergency worse. But then if you don't solve that problem, it really doesn't take long to be dead. Depending on what your hydration status and physical condition was when you had your last drink, some people will be dead within 3 days. Most everybody will be dead within 5 days. So having water always available that you can drink is critical for survival. Now, Sister Breeden pointed out, when you're preparing, you can't prepare for everything all at once. And so you have to decide, what will I do first? What will I do now? And so I point out a couple of things. The frequency of disasters is inversely proportional to their severity. So in my house, I have a disaster every day, but it's a small one, right? But every few months, there's a bit bigger one. And every few years, there's a bigger one still. That picture that I showed you that happened 32 years ago in my neighborhood, that was a pretty big one. I'm glad that doesn't happen every day. If I am at the very beginning of preparation, I want to make sure I can make it through the next day. And I want to make sure I can make it through the next week and the next couple of weeks. In fact, that has a layer on benefit, because if I can make it 2 weeks, my options might expand. There might be help from the outside world. The other things could happen if I can hold out long enough. But if I can't make it 3 days because I don't have access to water, what happens in 2 weeks doesn't matter. So focus your attention on the nearest horizon and the most likely scenario first. So we're going to talk about Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is, while everything is wonderful and the ground's not shaking, we're going to talk about how to store water so you can get through those 3 days and those 2 weeks and not have to be without and not die. Okay? And I was a civil engineering officer in the Air Force, and we always planned something, and we planned for that to fail. And then if that fails, what are we going to do? And if that fails, what are we going to do? So we had a layered approach to this. So we have to have a Plan B. And Plan B is, if we didn't have enough storage for the need, nobody came to help, and now it's 2 weeks in a day, we have to have already put in place Plan B to keep us going and give us more time. And so Plan A is to store enough water to get through the emergency, and Plan B is to obtain water and make it safer to drink. Okay, how much water do I need? The CDC says that you need to store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. And they recommend at least a 3-day supply and preferably a 2-week supply. I talked about that earthquake. It took 2 weeks before we had water. In Hurricane Katrina, it was a week before FEMA was able to distribute water to everybody that needed it. So these are the time frames that even if you're in a so-called civilized place, it can take a while before help can get on its way. All right, so that's how much water you need. What kind of storage containers? So I've got a few storage containers over here. This is some already pre-packaged, I don't know if you can see over there, it's bottled water. I'm going to pull one of these out so you can see what I'm talking about. Most people have seen this. So this has already been purified and packaged. It has a best by or best used by date stamped on it somewhere, I'm sure. And this will last at least a year and probably 2 years. What's nice about this is you know where to buy this. It doesn't cost a huge amount of money. And if you have no storage today, tomorrow you could buy 1 case of this and you'd be better off than you were before. And so you can follow that principle of do it as you can do it. CDC recommended a gallon a day per person. So you, depending on what size case of this, you can figure out how many cases do you need for your size family, and then set your goal first to have 3 days, then a week, and then 2 weeks. These fit under a bed, so it's easy to store. And while this wouldn't be my only storage method, this is a great storage method because it's incremental. But what I learned on that earthquake experience, sometimes you can't stay where your heavy water storage is. You have to go somewhere else because there's a gas explosion, or there are other things that make it inconvenient to stay around. So this is also portable. If I need to go from where I am, I can take some of these with me. This, not so much. Okay. I'm not saying don't have this. I have this, but a mixture. And the idea about putting this under beds also disperses your resources. So if your house collapses in part or something, you can't say, well, now I can't drink because my water storage was in that part, right? So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. So this is sort of the small end. You can buy water packaged in different ways. You can get in cans. This is little pouches of drinking water that's meant to last. This one says it lasts till August of 2030. So this has a longer shelf life. I put this in. This is also a commercially packaged thing. If you use BiPAP or you have other medicinal uses for distilled water, you need to plan for that as well and make sure you have what you need. There's canned water. Okay. This is something intermediate in size. So we can store at this size. As I said, portability may become an issue. It also later can be an issue on Plan B if you have to go get water and bring it to where you use it. You need containers of a size that you can transport. Obviously, if roads are fine and vehicles can run, you can go anywhere and you can even carry a bigger one. But in that earthquake, all the freeways collapsed, the overpasses. And so we were sort of in an island of, and we had what we had. So, yes.
How long can the water stay in one of those little containers before it has to be?
That's on my next slide, actually. But,
water bottle type size or gallons?
Any of them?
yeah,
Each of them.
so these will, most products have some kind of use by date. I don't see one on here, but I wouldn't worry if I had it in a cool, dark place. I could drink it for a year or 2 years. It would be fine. So the full answer to your question is depends on storage conditions and what the condition of the water was when you started. Okay, I need someone to assess the weight of this container.
50 pounds.
How many gallons?
40 pounds. It's 5 gallons.
5 gallons, 40 pounds.
Okay.
Well, 5 gallons actually would be more than 40 pounds. Water is about 2.2 pounds per gallon. And so this is more like, what?
2.2 pounds per gallon?
Yeah.
I think it's 8.3.
I think it's 8 something.
What did I say? So I think it's 8 something a cubic foot. But well, I could be remembering wrong. Right? Somebody can look that up. Anyway, I can tell you, I weighed this at home.
It's because you're so strong.
And
So it's weight.
this was 49 pounds for this amount of water. And so,
So the internet says 8.34
per gallon.
per gallon.
Per
Yeah,
gallon.
so
Okay.
times 5 plus
Well, then 5 times 8,
40.
40.
So that's a little bigger than 5.
Yeah.
Plus the container, plus.
Yeah, and I'm higher. This is a 30 gallon, then at 8, what,
So
8?
240, 250.
This is
8.34 times 200,
30.
30,
Times 30.
so 250 pounds.
Yeah, so you can't imagine you're gonna walk to a water source, fill this up, and carry it home. And indeed, once it's full, this is a bear to move around. And so if you have this kind of storage, you need to have a way to get the water out, because you can't just, dispense it that way. And you also need a wrench to open it. If you don't have those, it's not good. All right, so,
It's gonna be a while with a pocket knife to carve that.
and my wife mentioned to remind people that if you have it on its side and you put a valve on it for convenience, make sure your kids don't just when it's not an emergency, because then when it is, you won't have to do it.
And that hose, once you've got it installed, it needs to make sure it's up, or the whole thing will drain.
Yeah, that's
Literally happened
siphoning,
to
yeah.
me.
Once you start siphoning it, it keeps going.
Oh,
Right.
yes, exactly. Once it starts, it just keeps going unless you hold that hose.
All right, so what kind of container should you use? The container should be clean, unbreakable. You imagine if you thought, well, glass containers would be great because they're nice, you can clean them thoroughly. They don't leach chemicals, they're really great. But in an earthquake, you won't have water, but you will have a lot of broken glass. And some of your water should be portable. I've got a 30 gallon here. At various local places, you can buy water storage things up to 500 gallons. But again, I would keep some of it portable because you're not moving a 500 gallon tank. And there's all kinds of plastics that can be used for this, but if you look on the recycle thing, number 2 is considered to be the best for this. This is made out of the number 2 plastic. Here. All right, how do I maintain my storage? All right, you clean out your container first, and so the way you would do that is you put a little dishwashing soap and some water, shake it up, and use a brush if you can get a brush in there. Rinse it out, get it all clean in that fashion, and then disinfect it with some bleach and some water. Shake it around to coat the sides of it. Rinse it out with clean water, and then put your water in there or air dry it and protect it from contamination until you're ready to use it. Once you put your water in a container, you want to put it in a cool place away from contaminants. One of the unfortunate things with plastic containers is they can absorb volatile organic compounds. And so if you put it on the garage floor right next to your gas can for your mower and right next to your pesticide sprayer for your garden, some of that is going to make its way into your water. So you want to keep it far away from contaminants. And then every 2 or 3 years, change out your water. Do you have to put disinfectant in the water? If your water source is tap water, it already has disinfectant in it. There's residual chlorine in it. So you don't have to do anything before or after as far as disinfectant. If your water is suspect and you have concern, then you can use the bleach drop method that we'll talk about later. All right, I talked about how to clean the containers. All right, so plan A has failed. You've got your storage and it all leaked out, or you drank it all and there's still an emergency going on. But for whatever reason, it's time to consider plan A. So one thing that you can consider is, I might have some incidental storage. And incidental storage is water that's already in your home, or maybe that you didn't intentionally put there as storage. And that could be the water in your hot water heater, water in your toilet tanks, water in your ice cube trays. All of these things may be a source that could get you through a day or two. If plan A doesn't work, plan B doesn't work, plan C. In that earthquake, our hot water heater went through the wall. And so it wasn't available to us to use as a water source. Okay, rain and snow. So if it's winter and snow is falling or snow is on the ground, that could be a source of water. Surface waters, streams, ponds, lakes, ice. We have some of those near us, and I'm going to talk about some of those. Groundwater is water from under the ground. That's springs and wells. So if you know where there's a spring or a well, you can go there and get that. And then so you got to think out of the box sometimes, condensation catchers. So if there's humidity, when the temperature drops to a certain thing, the water carrying capacity of the air reaches what's called the dew point, and water comes out. And often you can feel it on the grass in the morning. But if you plan, you can capture some of that. So if you spread something on the ground, when the dew forms, you can then funnel it into there. These are low yield kinds of things, but a cup of water might give you enough energy and ability to do something more. You can set up screens in the air that work on the same principle that will capture dew, and it'll run down the screen into a container. Solar still, same idea, only you're evaporating the moisture out of the ground, which then condenses on the, has everybody seen what the solar still? Think of a big piece of plastic over a hole in the ground. And the plastic may have a rock or something to weight it down so it comes to a point. Underneath that point is where the drips will fall. When the sun goes on the plastic, it will cause moisture from the ground to evaporate. It'll come in contact with that plastic, and it'll run down and drip into your cup. All right, here's my error again. I'll have to fix this. I don't know why I had that in my head. But it is heavy. That part I'm right about. And so whether you have it in storage, you may have to move it to where you're going to use it. And so you have to think about how you're going to get it from there to there. And so you need containers of an appropriate size. And water tends to want to go down. So if you want it to go up, you either have to carry it up or pump it up. So there's a pump needed to get the water out of there, for example. All right, here's an important principle. If you go find some water, it may not be appropriate to just drink it. It may have something in it that you don't want to drink. And so you might need to treat it in some ways in order to make it drinkable. And the other principle is whenever you're facing a situation where you have to treat water to make it drinkable, always start with the best water that you can find. Because you may be able, if you have enough skill and materials, you may be able to take that really bad water and turn it into wonderful water, but it's going to be a harder and more laborious and more expensive process. All right, definitions. A lot of people mix these terms up, and I don't know why it bothers me, but it does. Water purification means separating water and not water, right? So you're taking all the not water out of water. And this can be in degrees, so it can be partially purified, but that's the objective. I'm removing that which is not water from the water to make the result more pure, okay? Disinfection is not necessarily taking anything out. I'm killing stuff, right? So if the water has microbes like bacteria and viruses and protozoa in it, and a lot of those things, if I drink it, will make me sick, and that's not good. So I don't want to drink those things while they're alive and doing their thing. So I want to kill them. Obviously, if I could remove them, that's also disinfection, right? And that's purification as well. Sometimes there are little chemical tablets that we're going to talk about here in a bit that people refer to as water purification tablets. They aren't. They're water disinfection tablets because they're adding a chemical, and you'll be able to tell because it will taste like something more than water when you drink it. All right, I'm going to talk about some water purification techniques. These are a wide variety of things you can do to take not great water and in some ways separate not water from water. And you can do this, these different techniques are more effective on some things than on others. And so if you went to the water treatment plant, where the city water does this thing, you would see some of these techniques. They don't just do one thing at that plant. They do a series of things. And that might be what you want to do as well. So the first one's called aeration. And aeration is where you expose the droplets of water to the air. And how could that help? Well, it helps actually in multiple ways. So one of the things that makes nasty water nasty is it has dissolved volatile organic compound gases in it. And sometimes you can smell the water. It's not good. Some of these VOCs you don't smell, but they're still not good. So what's a VOC? If you remember your organic chemistry or not. Organic chemicals have a carbon backbone. Okay, that's the whole definition of organic chemistry. They're all built on a carbon backbone. And these volatile organic compounds are carbon-based molecules that are volatile. Volatile means they readily go into the air. So if I didn't bring it because it wouldn't be good, If I had a can of gas here and I opened it, you wouldn't have to see it to know that I had done it. Because gasoline is a volatile organic compound. And so are its components like benzene and toluene. All these things are volatile organic compounds. And unfortunately, some volatile organic compounds get into drinking water. Some of them because the city treated it. When they chlorinate water and it interacts with organic matter, one of the byproducts is a volatile organic compound. But here's the good news. Aeration can help dramatically reduce this. And so if you wanted to, you could make a cascading aerator that would spill water down and expose it to the air. You could pour water through something like this that will break it up into multiple streams, and you keep doing that again and again and again. Ideally outside, if it has a nasty volatile organic compound. Otherwise, as it's released from the water, it's going to be in the air you're breathing. Right? So you want to do that in a ventilated place. The higher exposure you have with the water and the air interface, the more effective it is. So that means if you can think of a way to get smaller drops, maybe a sprayer, or you can bubble air through water, and the smaller the bubbles, then the better. But this will dramatically reduce volatile organic compounds, and they do this at the water treatment plant. Okay. Density differential. If I had oil, and that was the contaminant in my water, what would you expect to see if you were looking at this oil and water?
And flooding.
You would
Steamed
expect
layer.
a layer of which would be on top.
Oil.
Oil, yes. So the oil would be on top because it's less dense and the water would be below. So if I had a bucket, say, if I had a bucket and I had a spout on the bucket and I had a circumstance where the contaminant had a different density from water, I could let it settle and it would become layers. And then I could open this and remove whatever was the less dense. And if there were three densities, I could remove the middle density. So that's density differential, right? And so some stuff floats and some stuff doesn't. So bacteria, once you kill them, they tend to be less dense than water. So they're going to be up here if they settle out. And some other contaminants will be down low. That's why I didn't put this spigot all the way down, because under certain circumstances it can form three different layers. What if the water is the lightest thing? Well, I can get rid of the not water by differential density. All right. That all makes sense? Okay. Reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis uses pressure and a semi-permeable membrane. And this is separating water and not water at the molecular level. And so for some of the stuff you can separate water and not water with reverse osmosis is salt. So if you have salt water and you need pure water, you can use reverse osmosis to separate that. It also can separate certain volatile organic compounds. It can separate heavy metals, radionuclide. Easy for me to say. Radiation, right? So what I'm talking about here is uranium and radium and those kinds of things, cadmium. There is another kind of radiation, radon, which is a big deal actually here in Utah. It comes up out of the ground. That's a gas. We have talked about a method where you could reduce the radon in your water already. This is my symbol for it. Yeah. Okay, reverse osmosis is highly effective at reducing most all contaminants. So microbes, salt, radioactive solids, very good at all of those. I have a reverse osmosis countertop machine here. And it has a reservoir that you fill from the tap in the back. And inside, it has a pump that creates the pressure necessary to perform reverse osmosis. And it also has a carbon, activated carbon pre-filter. I'm going to return to that because I have that as a separate item. And the third thing it has is a UV disinfecting thing. So this has 3 distinct kinds of treatments that it does. Many people have reverse osmosis things as an under sink unit. You can get them as a whole house thing. The reason that I have this countertop one is the whole problem here is the water pipes aren't supplying water. And without them doing that, my under sink thing is not going to help. Yes?
Ceramic filters, is that a good thing or does it work or?
Yeah, it's great. I've got one and it's coming up. All right, so we've talked about reverse osmosis. Another method is distillation. So this is a countertop distiller. You put water in a tank here. This has a heating element in it. It's electric. And you plug that in and the water turns to steam. It evaporates. And then there's a coil in here that the water condenses on, and then the water drips into this pitcher there. And distillation is highly effective, again, for removing just about everything. It doesn't solve all problems because the way it works is it's turning the water to steam. It's evaporating the water and then condensing it. So it's easy to see that since rocks don't evaporate, they're not going to end up over there. So you got a good not water separation through that process. It's also pretty easy to see that a bacteria is not only going to be killed because it's boiling water, it's not going to evaporate. And so it stays in here instead of ending up over on the condensed side. The only exception, and if I have any kind of volatile organic compound or nuclear waste or whatever I've got in there that I'm trying to separate, as long as its evaporation point is lower than the evaporation point of water, it's going to stay in here. If its evaporation point is higher than water, it will evaporate, it'll get condensed, and it'll come over here. The good news is most of the stuff that is likely to be in the water you're trying to improve has a evaporation point low. So this is a very, very effective thing. If you did have some volatile organic compound with a very high evaporation point, what you would do is let it heat up and not capture it until that part had already been evaporated away, and then start collecting the pure water. Okay, the next thing, coagulation, flocculation. Anybody want to? No. Okay.
Good night, Clay.
So I have some water that was collected today. And we can sample this water if anybody's thirsty. This water is from Utah Lake. No? All right.
Has a color on it.
I don't know why everybody's skittish. I can't. It's not that bad.
Kinda looks like utility.
Earlier, we talked about a method of separating water from not water, which was just let it stand, right? This water's actually been standing for hours, and it looks pretty much like it did when it started. And there's a reason for this. This water has contaminants that are in what's called a colloidal suspension. The particles have an electrical charge, and like charges repel. And so they're all pushing away from each other, refusing to let gravity pull them to the bottom. They're mutually resisting. So if we can break the electrical charge, then we can get this to settle out, and we can use differential. Okay, so I used to be a young men's leader, and one of the trips we took with about 20 people was a trip on the Green River. But the Green River is very brown. And the recommendation from Forest Service is take all the water that you're going to need. CDC says you need a gallon of water a day per person. We were going to be gone a week. It was a canoe trip. And so it wasn't very feasible to do that. So the option is filter the water. But if you have really bad water, your filters will clog, which is what they had to say. But I knew that there's another way. Because with colloidal suspensions, if you can break the charge, you can make it dissipate. I have here something you get in the spice aisle at Walmart. It's called alum. So I hope this works. All right, so I put some alum in there, and I don't know if I have a thing to stir it with.
You could use the pump end maybe.
Okay.
I can go to kitchen.
All right, I've got my swivel stick. If you worked at the water treatment plant where they do this, they would have a way to test the amount to put in there. You saw how carefully I measured. And so I'm going to watch this. You can watch this. If over the course of the next few minutes, this starts to look clearer, that would say that we've broken some of the electrical charges. If after, 20, 30 minutes, it still doesn't look very clear, I would add in thirdly. Okay. So what I just did is called coagulation. Flocculation is a related process where once the particles lose their charge, they're able to clump together. And after they clump together, they're bigger. And they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to float to the top or they're going to sink to the bottom. And then we already know a method we can use to get the good water out of that. So on the Green River, that's what I did. I had a bunch of stuff to pre-process the water using coagulation. And once it was clear, I put it in a filter. We had 3 of these, as I recall. This is a bag that you put water in. So after the water was clarified and decanted off with my towel, we would fill these bags, and there's a filter in here. And then we could go from there into our tank. And every evening, after we made camp, we set up multiples of, were you there? We set up all of our filters and our water treatment plant, and we made all the water we would need for the next day, and it was really good water. All right, freezing. This is amazing. So when water is not absolutely unique in this, but it's pretty unique in that when most substances freeze, they get smaller, more dense. But when water freezes, it expands. That's why if your pipes freeze, they can burst, because water gets bigger when it freezes, less dense. Less dense things go to the top. That's why ice on a pond is not on the bottom, it's on the top because it's less dense. So this is actually great for the fish who would die otherwise, but it's also wonderful for us if we're in need of cleaner water. Because if you add an impurity to water, it lowers the freezing/melting point. You can spread salt on the sidewalk to lower that so that it stays liquid instead of being slick and icy, right? So that's an impurity, that's salt. Anytime you add an impurity, you lower the freezing point. If it's really cold outside, the cold air is in contact with the top surface of the lake. Eventually, if it's going to form ice, that's where it's going to be forming. And if you've got little localized molecules of water around, and some are mixed with impurities, and some are more pure than their neighbors, which ones will freeze first? The more pure ones will freeze first. And when they freeze, what will they do? They'll go up. And so this is great if you need clean water. So this is Utah Lake. Utah Lake did not have any ice on it today. The last time I did a water thing, Utah Lake did. And so I had water from Utah Lake that looked like that, and I had ice from Utah Lake that when melted, I tested it with a total dissolved solid meter, and it was as good as distilled water. And now, one caveat is obviously the ice is in contact with impure water. and perhaps impure air. And so if you had a bunch of clean water and you rinse the ice off, you would be in better shape. But if it's ice, even if it's not perfect, that's a purification thing because you're moved a long way toward perfect. Let me see what I've got here. So this is ice from Tibble Fork on the reservoir, okay? I see some bubbles in it and a few things, but this looks pretty good to me. And if I were to melt that down and test it, it would be. I have this is water from Tibble Fork Reservoir. Based on the principle of start with the best water you can find, I would go with this. Just saying. But if this was all I could get, I can make this drinkable. It's just a lot more work and more steps. Okay. So I don't know how many of you have ever thought about freezing as a purification technique, but it actually is pretty amazing. Because of the potential contamination on the edges, I would further treat it, to make sure I didn't have any nasties on it. If you can rinse it off and you can gather a huge amount of it and put it in a clean container and refreeze it, that ice will be more pure than the first generation ice. And you can repeat that process, rinse it off, so that you have cleaner and cleaner ice. Okay, activated charcoal, and I'm out of time.
Just talk fast.
Okay, go fast. Okay. I mentioned activated charcoal earlier. This is not charcoal briquettes. Don't do that. Many commercially made filters have activated charcoal in them. And they purify water not as a porous filter, but through a process called adsorption, not absorption, like a sponge, not that, adsorption. And they take, they're particularly good at volatile organic compounds where they bind in their pores, they bind these things. So they're not blocking them from flowing through, they're grabbing onto them. And they can grab onto benzene and gasoline and all kinds of nasty stuff. They grab onto chlorine, which is not an organic compound, but so they're good for more than just that. They take a lot of the nasties out of water. They protect the reverse osmosis membrane from chlorine. Chlorine can attack the membrane. So there's a pre-filter that takes out the chlorine and fluorine, and then the membrane is protected. You can buy activated charcoal loose at an aquarium store or Walmart, something, and make your own improvised filter with this. But it's in lots of commercial filters as well. Ceramic filter, and this will be, I guess, my last thing. These tubes have really tiny pores in them. They're made out of ceramics. These pores, I think, are 5 microns, really small. And these filter bad things by being a very small pore and having lots and lots of thickness where the pores don't line up exactly. So to get through the whole thing, it's hard for something that's larger. So these will filter out bacteria and protozoa and some viruses. Viruses are super tiny. So not all viruses, but most microbes that you're likely to have contaminating your water can be filtered out with this. Bad news about this is it's slow. This is a gravity-fed process. So you put water in here, it has to go through, under the force of gravity, has to go through those tiny pores, and eventually drips out of here into your container that you're catching it in, and you can use that spigot to extract your water. But it may take 1 or 2 hours to process a gallon of water. So that's the bad news. The good news is this requires no electricity. Yeah,
Can those filters be backwashed?
yes, they can. And so this is another part of the good news. You can backwash these filters. You can scrub these filters on the outside and prolong their useful life. So even if I started out with something like this, which would tend to clog things up, I can clean these filters. So with maintenance like backwashing and cleaning, these filters can last for a year, 2 years of steady use. So they're pretty good. This is a commercially bought assembly here, but you can buy the filters and make a stack of buckets to do a do-it-yourself version of this. And you can speed it up by adding more filters. You know, it's got more ways to go. All right, there are other filters. Apparently, I don't have time to talk about it. Just going to mention some of the other stuff on here. This is a distiller that you don't plug in. The heat sources, you put it over a fire. And obviously, the capacity is much larger. To fill that little pitcher with that electric one there, it seems like it takes about an hour plugged in. If I was relying on that for all my drinking water, and I had a family, that wouldn't cover it. The second thing is, you may or may not have electricity when you may or may not have water. We did it. So having the option of using any heat source that you want, you're good to go. All right, so I've run out of time, so I want to give you a call to action. And that is, wherever you are in the process of being prepared as far as water, commit yourself to do something so that you can handle at least a small disaster and over time expand on that. So I think we're done. Afterwards, if you want to look at any of this junk or ask questions about it, I'm happy to assist.
Mark, just
Yes.
one quick question. You talked about the differences between water purification and water disinfection.
Yes.
Do you have to do both?
If your water is absolutely pure, you're done,
Right.
because you don't have any microbes in there. If you have purified water and it's an open air container, microbes in the air can reinfect it. So,
So you can have disinfected impure water.
yes,
certainly, Yes. Right?
yes,
But, and you can have pure water that's infected.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And so I'll return to
Sorry,
this. This particular unit has a charcoal filter to remove the OCs. It has a reverse osmosis membrane, which takes out just about everything. And the final thing, and I didn't get to this,
UV light.
is a UV light that disinfects the water. So anything that was living in the tank or got through somehow is killed. So when the water comes out, it's absolutely safe to drink. If I leave that water sitting around, it can become reinfected. Because UV light, while it's very good at killing microbes, leaves no residual. That's good news if you don't want to taste chlorine, but it means that if it's sitting around, it can become recontaminated. Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. You can see that it's starting to get stuff at the bottom of that container. Thank you so much for your attendance, and I hope this was helpful in some degree. Again, just take whatever's the next step for you. And I bear my testimony that I know the peace that comes from being prepared. It's a real thing. And it's like I'm not perfectly prepared on everything, but I'm to the point in some things I go, okay, bring it on. Let's just do it. You know, we can manage through things. And it is a great feeling to have that. And Kim Telford's going to give our closing prayer for us.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we were able to gather here as a neighborhood and friends to learn about how to be more prepared with our water. We pray for thy Spirit to be upon us, that we might know what the next step is for each of us, that we might be able to help one another along the way as well. We are grateful for Linda and all of her preparation, and we pray for thy Spirit to be with us as we go forward to be more prepared in this way as well spiritually. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.